The newbies and the people who took the class with me from before. This is the kit that we all have in common with a few exceptions. We're going to start out with 5 cards. They're 4x4. They're watercolor paper. Put these aside for the moment. All right. Next, we've got a package of new paintbrushes. All right. Then we've got 2 gel pens, 1 cup, roll of painter's tape. So I know that last time we struggled quite a bit with the way that I got taped to you guys. So I'm hoping that this is going to be better. Let me know. And then we've got a package of foam squares. So these foam squares are really important, and we'll see why in just a bit. And then each of you should have some paper towels. Newbies, you should also have a pretty palette and a Sharpie. All right, I'm looking to everybody. Can I get a thumbs up that your kit has been assembled and it's good to go? We've got all our materials. Right, good deal. Let's get started. All right, so I want to start by focusing on our 4x4 panels. So you'll notice that you can configure them in a different way, right? Each one of these I made for you guys in a specific order, but I want you to own the composition that happens with these. Start to play with the order of things, mix and match a little bit. But what's important is I want each layer to be independent from the last. So if you change the order of things, just make sure that you can see what was in front of it. And the piece of paper, the watercolor paper that has no negative space, that has to absolutely be last. That is non-negotiable because obviously it's going to hide the other layers, right? So keep rearranging, and you can, because they're a perfect square, you can turn them on either side. It won't make a difference, but it'll start to change things each time. And so once you think that you are satisfied with the composition and the order that you've selected, we can move forward. Did everybody feel good about the order of things? To select something? All right. Now, our next step, we are going to get them attached to our table or whatever surface you've got to paint on. So some of the things that we cover this evening are going to be a recap for those of you that took the class with me last night, or I'm sorry, last time. But there's going to be plenty of new material for you guys too. So before we completely dive in, I want you to order things. So pay attention to what was front and what was back. Actually, we're going to need to do that first. So I'm back treading a bit. So I kept them all together, 1 through 5. I'm going to flip them over while they're still intact. And then at the bottom right-hand corner, I'm going to number them so that I don't forget. But what's really important is that we're going to flip them over to number them. So number 5 should actually be the first page in our composition. Does everybody follow? All right. Thumbs up to let me know we're on the same page. Good deal. Okay. So now once we've got everything numbered, we're going to flip over once more. And now we're ready to tape down our surfaces. So when we watercolor, we want to tape down our watercolor sheets to ensure that our page stays nice and flat. And we can control some of that rippling that happens. And you know what? I'm going to use the same roll of tape that I made for every one of you to see how difficult that ends up being, if it was a good idea or not. We'll see. It's a little tricky. No, I didn't bring scissors. It should be easy enough to get a hold of, though, once I start it. Maybe not. There we go. So you guys may be wondering why I included these little squares and why we're not just using regular watercolor sheets like we did last time. Well, the idea of this is watercolor and layers. And with layers, all of the things that we are able to accomplish. So one of them being depth, color illusion, oops, pattern, plenty of things that we can create by layering. And so because watercolor is created with layers, we are going to create a three-dimensional painting that incorporates layers. So I'm hoping you guys are as excited about it as I am. I got to create one before we started our class this evening. It was pretty fun. So I'm going to be mindful as I'm taping down my sheets that my outline is consistent. So although it's going to be minimal, I want it to be consistent all the way around because you're going to see that white border. The border that so everywhere that we're creating or everywhere that we're taping down, it's going to remain white. It's creating a resist against the paint. All right. Are you guys still working on taping down your squares? Okay, good. I don't want to go too fast for anybody. So just holler if you need me to slow down, feel free to unmute and say, Narissa, hold up. Or if there's any questions, please stop me in the middle, okay? All right. So I do want us to keep in mind that the top left square was our top piece in the composition. We're going to treat that panel differently than everything else. All right. And so I don't want to use that much. I should have spaced that out differently. So when we begin watercolor painting, something that's important to keep in mind is the setup. So considering the resist of the tape, we want to decide in the very beginning how much of a resist we want, how much of a border we're happy with. And the way that I spaced out my pages, it wouldn't be even with the width of the tape itself. So I think I might need to back things up a bit. Where are you guys at as far as putting down your panels? Still working? Kind of tough with the tape, huh? If you guys have an idea on how to better get that tape to you, let me know. And I think we're going to take a break from painting in July, probably get started again in August, but instead of painting, we're going to start craft nights. So we're going to, do we like that idea? Cool. I'm happy to hear it. So what I'm thinking is we're going to do things like, we're going to do beading, felting, whatever we can to dive into all things fine arts and crafts. We can learn different things together. And hopefully by then, I don't know if we're being too optimistic, but I'm hopeful that we can do some events in person at some point this year. And that would make craft night a whole different experience. All right. So you can undo this tape. It just takes a little bit of finessing. And when we're ready to pull up, I want you to be careful because the tooth of the paper, and that is just the texture of the watercolor sheet, it wants to sometimes grab at that adhesive on the tape. So sometimes you'll pull up on that paper, and that's okay if it happens. It's not the end of the world, but something that'd be great to avoid. Okay. All right, I think we're about ready to move forward. Everybody on the same page? Good deal. So now that we've got our panels nice and organized and we're ready to go, we're going to start with some of the, oh, I didn't get water, excuse me. Forgot to get water for my watercolor. That wouldn't have worked out well, would it? All right. So how many of you were in last time's class? Can you raise your hand? Got 3, 4. I recognize more names than that. So I think most of you are from last time, which is great. If you find that your palette is doing things like this, that's fine. Try to keep, when you open it up, try to make sure that you are aligning the same colors, and the water will reconstitute the paint, bringing it fresh and remounting it to its palette, okay? So no need to be concerned. Let's go ahead and dive in using our paints, our new paint brushes. So just to reiterate from last time, each brush comes with a solid, hard coating on it, and all that is starch. What you don't want to do is take it and break that coating off. That starch is meant to protect the bristles. So just wet the brush. Sometimes takes a little bit of patience, and work that starch out. We're going to start with the first top left panel, and we are going to put down a fairly light glaze or layer. The terms can be used interchangeably. The great thing about layering or glazing is that you can change the entire mood of a piece. It can be done in stages, at the very beginning or at the very end. If you've created a scene and you want to make it a little bit hazy, colder feeling, you can take a light blue and wash it over. And so if you're following along, all I'm doing is a light wash. Just a little bit of water all the way through. I picked up some pigment and let it carry. Let the watercolor do its job, moving freely across the tooth of the paper. All right. If you want more saturation to this layer, add some more color. But we are not going to add any more water than what's absolutely necessary. And what I did was I picked that blue right out of the palette and just put it on. I didn't mix this color. Typically, I won't use colors right from the tube or straight from the palette. A lot of times we get a sense that they're maybe unnatural, and it's because they are a little too perfected. So you might want to change that color a bit. If you've got a blue, maybe add some purple from the palette, throw in some pink, but don't feel like you need to be consistent with it. And when it dries, we'll see different things starting to happen. So moving to this second panel, or I'm sorry, we're going to skip. Well, let's see. Yeah, let's go ahead and go to the second panel, and we're going to do dry on dry. And so when we work with dry on dry, we want a very small amount of water. And a lot of pigment on that brush. And in this step, I just want you to freely make shapes rather. And overlap these shapes. I chose to do these diamond shapes. And my brush is very dry. There's a method called scumbling, and that's pushing the pigment into the tooth of the paper. So if we were to look at a side view of the paper under a microscope, we're going to see those valleys, those highs and those lows. That's the different tooths, the different quality textures of the paper. And so when I scumble, I'm going to push and force pigment into those tooths, into those valleys. And you'll see that it brings up and highlights the tooth of that paper. So working dry, let's just continue to repeat similar shapes. There's going to be a lot of these panels that disappear at the end, but the surprise is going to be the way that they come together. What kind of shapes have you guys chosen to overlap in this panel? We've got circles,
squares and triangles.
So what we're doing this evening is non-objective, non-representational, it's abstract. We're still understanding the materiality of watercolor. And we're focusing on layers and depth and how we can create visual space, implied space with those layers. And so the more we continue to do the same thing over and over with repetition, we start to understand that there's what we did last time with the landscape, a foreground, a background, and a middle ground. Only this time we're creating the same illusion with shapes, non-representational objects. And there's nothing saying that you have to continue with the same shape. I started to do something that looked a little bit like a lemon, maybe a leaf. Go ahead and change it up. But if you started with a more organic, linear, smooth shape, maybe what you want to do now is something that's more geometric. Just apply layer over layer. Just have fun with it and start to see what happens with the colors and the shapes as you draw one on top of the other, on top of the other.
Are we using the
Alright.
same color for all?
Once you feel like this panel has been successfully filled and you're satisfied with the depth that you've achieved, we're ready to move to our third panel.
Excuse me.
In this third panel, we're going to do a combination of things. I'm going to start with a pretty wet brush on the right-hand side of my panel. And I didn't see, if I am not careful to rinse my brush in between panels or before moving on to a different portion of my composition, I'm going to transfer that color. And so I want to be careful to rinse that brush out before going to a fresh color and keeping the pots nice and clean. So I'm going to do sort of, Sure, absolutely. So backing up just a little bit, we started to lay color down on the right side of this panel by putting a significant amount of water down. I made sure that that water was glossy and that the page was reflecting back at me. That's how I know that there's enough water on the page. And then I laid down a slight amount of pigment. Rinsing out my brush, I mirrored those steps on the left side. Okay. All right, looks like we've got a new person. Welcome. All right. So all I'm doing is laying down color on the left side, the same way that I did on the right. And what's really magical is what's happening in between. They're starting to mix themselves. The water is doing the work for me. So really allow the watercolor to interact with itself. And if you'd like, start to place pigment, gather enough pigment, fill that brush, and place that pigment in random areas where the water will take that pigment and spread it. And then where the paper has started to dry, let's go ahead, rinse our brushes and place spots of water in random areas. And what we're going to do is just understand further the interaction that the paints are going to have with one another. We're going to pick up the red or the pink. Really, it doesn't matter. I want you to pick up what color you want, what color speaks to you and what's happening in this panel. Go back to our dots of water and lay that pigment down. Don't worry about what's happening. It is all about letting go of control.
Mikey, get out of there.
And so what's really wonderful is seeing how the colors are going to interact with one another, watching them mix themselves, watching as how they spread, and really playing up the nature of watercolor in this panel. So to reiterate what I have already covered, we've got a wet on wet in our first panel. Our second panel is a dry on dry with repetitive shapes, creating depth. Our third panel is a wet on wet where we are using optical color mixing to experience the different qualities of watercolor in color mixing. And moving on. Is everyone ready to move to the next panel? No, no rush. No rush. So while we work on this panel, I'm just going to continue to layer those colors. And if you find that your page it's too wet and it seems that you cannot work with it anymore, I want you to pick up the water, take the paper towel in your kit, kind of spin the end of it like this. Go to the page and the paper towel will draw that water up just like a straw. And if you are painting and it's just too much wet on wet, or the colors are getting muddy, it's too wet. Watercolor is all about discipline and patience. And so that's why working at multiple panels or having a few compositions you're working on at once is ideal. If you're anything like me and you just weren't taught patience. I don't know how to be patient. That's not something that comes natural by me. All righty. The further we get into this, the more we will see different interactions. Is anyone surprised by what's happening on this wet on wet? Watching these colors mix and the motions that are happening.
Some of them look like starbursts.
Pretty cool stuff, huh?
Some look like starbursts. Oh, just can't hear me.
So in case you joined late, what we did was we took our 5 panels and we arranged them on a flat surface. We went ahead and taped our corners, making sure that we have a border that acts as a resist against the paint, but it also keeps our page flat. Okay. So I think that I'm going to hop around a bit. Who has finished their 3rd panel? Okay, so I think what we're going to do is we're going to need to leave this 3rd panel so that it doesn't get overworked. Mine has started to get muddy. It's a little too wet. If you find that yours is starting to ripple, it really is time to walk away, even if it's been confined to the tape on the outsides. But what I'm going to start to do is these 2 panels here, I want to just be free formed, a combination of what we've learned. Okay, so we're going to do dry on dry, some wet on wet, layering, pattern work. But this next panel, for my own aesthetics, I'm going to do variation in repetitive shapes like we did in the second panel. And I'm going to start by painting in water, because I'll go back, and this is another technique that you can use. Although it can be difficult to keep track of what you're doing, because painting in water, it's translucent. It's difficult to see it. And you have to work a little bit quickly to ensure that it doesn't dry before you can fill that water bubble with pigment. So as I suspected, you cannot see what I'm doing because I'm painting in invisible lines, but I will be quick. So what I did was I just painted in water, and I'm going to drop pigment where I painted in water. And so this gives me precise control over a certain area. The paint is attracted to the water and will only go where I told it to with the water. And so basically what I did was lay down the blueprint of the path I want the pigment to travel. And it really is mesmerizing to watch the water drop fill with pigment. And what I'm going to do after that is combine colors. I switched brushes. A good rule of thumb when painting is to use the brush that's most appropriate for the job. And so if I'm wanting to paint a really tiny little area, grab the smallest brush that you have. If it's a detail brush, I want something that's more rounded versus a flathead brush. Better for line work. The shape of the brush is going to mimic the job that I want. So if I'm wanting linear, straight, I'm going to go again for that flat line. Curvy, free, I'm going to go for that rounded brush. And so as we're starting to build on our collection in these kits, I know that in my kit at home, I tend to continue to I continue to use the same materials over and over, regardless of how many brushes I own. I still go after my favorites. Have you guys been painting at home, and are you developing any favorite tools in the kit? Favoriting one over the other? Cool. I tend to go after, I think the flat brushes are usually what I use. A flat head at home. It's about I think it's a 1/2 inch. I used to do a lot of oil painting, but I haven't painted. I haven't painted in my studio for a long time. I switched to metalworking. I was thinking about teaching you the basics in either some sculpture or jewelry, some basics in metalsmithing. How many of you would be interested in that? Make some bracelets and, oh, I got some screens to come on for that. All right. See, now we're pumped. Cool. We might have to get creative over with our venue though. I don't know that the library is going to appreciate hammers and anvils. But maybe we can metalsmith in the park. That could be fun. As creative as we can be with our work, we can be just as creative with our venue, right? We'll figure it out. And so all I'm doing in this panel is I'm just filling color in between. So where I had those water droplets, it's really a wet on wet. I'm letting the colors mix themselves, but I'm going in between and filling that area with a dry brush and just doing some dry on dry. And it never stops surprising me, the different things that can happen in watercolor on their own. I'm kind of a control freak, so watercolor is a good way to let go. It's important to understand the practical application of how these materials are going to be applied and used. But once we understand how they work, we have a lot of freedom in how we apply them. And so I'm just freehanding right now, doing now just wet on wet, using those same techniques that we did before, carrying it out, letting it mix. And what I'm hoping we can do on our last panel, and don't feel rushed if you're not there yet. Okay, because all we are going to do on this final panel is a solid color. I'm really a yellow orange kind of person, so I'm going to lay that orange down nice and dark. And to do that, I'm going to lay off the water and really get that pigment down. And so what I want us to do is bounce in between these panels. We've laid the groundwork, but what we are doing is we're working on layers. So just because we're working on our last and final panel or the panel just before it, doesn't mean that we are just about done. What we are doing is working in sequence, working in intervals. It's really important to understand that way to work when it comes to watercolor. That's the beauty of working in an abstract manner, is that we really get to just appreciate the materials. We don't have to be worried about whether or not we created something that looked like a landscape or our tree doesn't look like a tree. We can just appreciate the different colors.
Now, the last
what it's
panel, did
doing
you
for
do
the
dry
page.
on dry?
I added some yellow. I guess I cheated a little bit. I wanted a solid color in here, but I added a little bit of yellow. Throw that orange back in there. All right. And so once that final panel is done, how many of you have painted all 5 panels at this point?
Not yet.
Not yet.
All right, thumbs up if we've painted all 5 panels. I think we're okay.
Going right down, right down.
So I'm going to go back to the first panel. But it's okay if we're not at the same panel. There was no specific order to things. It doesn't matter if you're on the first and I'm on the last. And you can follow along if you're with me. And if not, maybe some of this you'll remember, maybe some of this will be new.
You
But
like
what
it?
I am going to do to my first panel is I'm going to add some splatters to it. And I'm going to hit the very top. I'm going to flick it. I loaded that brush with plenty of paint and I added a splatter. This is going to be messy. So
My baby boy.
fine print there. Messy, messy. The more you load up the brush, the more dramatic that splatter is going to be. I'm aware that that first panel we put down is going to be the outer layer of my composition. It's going to be what everybody sees first. So I'm going to go back with that first panel and it should be pretty dry. And if we want to test how dry our paper is, use the back of your hand. Temperature is a really good indicator for watercolor. If it's still rather cool, we know it's wet. And these panels I did last, still pretty wet. And these guys are dry, so I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to work dry on dry. For the sake of time, I'm going to only do dry on dry from here on, because we are going to take our panels off the table soon, and we want them to be dry for our final step. So remembering the way that we discussed picking up water, if you find that a panel is far too wet, start to pick up the water. And they do have themselves muted. No, so I was under the impression that everybody in the class was muted. Did you guys do that, or did I somehow? Oh, no,
I'm not
I
muted.
can't hear anyone. Maybe,
I have no idea.
so maybe it's the volume on the actual.
I muted
computer.
myself.
So if someone wouldn't mind unmuting and trying to talk so that I know if we've got sound.
Hello.
Hello?
Nope, I sure can't hear you. And you know, that's my bad, everyone. I thought that we were all muted. Unfortunately, that is an oversight on my part.
I don't know if I'm muted or not.
That's all right. We're gonna pretend like it's a two-way conversation for a minute.
So you
All I'm
stipulate,
doing right now is orange spots on my first panel. I'm working very dry as to not add any water to it. Very, very little water.
well, I'm a little
And then I'm
wet.
just gonna go in, grab a different color, and do some more spots. I am trying to be a little more precise with this panel than the rest, just because it is going to be the front. In the end, what we're doing is something similar to a book, that it's a three-dimensional painting. I thought it would be a fun play on things to use layers to create a painting that wasn't flat. And hopefully in the end, what we can do, if any of you are interested, I would love to do a pop-up exhibition where we displayed our work in the library. You can bring it to me, and I thought it would be fun to display them. Awesome. If any of you are interested, I'm really happy to put them up. I'm pretty proud of our group. So let's see. I guess my spots ended up being more like hash marks, and that's okay too. I know that I'm getting pretty dry in my pages. So that's good. It's about where we want it. I think here we're gonna have to start about 15 minutes or so. We're gonna have to start adding this up or taking this apart and constructing our three-dimensional painting, okay? So we've got about 15 minutes to start wrapping things up. And with that being said, I think it's a good time to start applying those gel pens. I think, and what happened to our chat screen? And I appreciate everybody being patient with us. Zoom hasn't been friendly this evening. And so in addition to no sound from you guys, I now have no chat. So maybe just be real expressive. Let me know if you're liking things. Awesome. Good deal. Yay.
Hey, honey,
Good, good.
stuff is blowing on the porch.
Awesome. Thanks, you guys. Yay. Hello. Oh, Kim, will you switch screens? That's all right. Okay. Hi, back. We can go back. All right. So now let's begin to utilize those
No,
awesome
no.
gel pens that I included in those kits.
You little
Gel
shit.
pens are a really fun addition when it comes to
Get out of here.
watercolor. Make sure that your panel is nice and dry before we go to this step, okay? And so if you're wanting to cheat a little bit and you can't quite visualize the end product, what I want you to notice is that this negative shape here, this sort of crescent moon that we have going on, envision a circle. So isolate one panel and envision a circle. The portion of the page that hangs outside into the circle, that's what you're going to end up seeing as your end product. Okay. So all of this, we're not going to see it. We'll know it's there, but we're not going to see it. If that influences how you want to proceed with your design, that's fine. But all I'm doing now is drawing over the top of my first panel using the watercolors. That metallic quality is a really nice contrast against the looseness and organic feel of the watercolor paints. And depending on the way the light hits the water or the gel pens, really brings out the different lines that you put down. And so I am hopeful that you have saved some of what was included, if not all that was included in your kit from last time. And you have access to that Sharpie.
Oh,
And if that's true, you can use that Sharpie too. All I'm going to do is create pattern with repetition and shape. This process really appeals to me because it's meditative and relaxing. And it doesn't have to be precise. And again, new things are coming to life once we have 5 or 10 or 50. The composition continues to change, even though, despite the shape and the process being the same. So I'm just going to continue to play with line. Drawing with my Sharpie or my gel pens, working right over the top of the colors I laid down. And at this point, what you could do is lay down more color. Create a wash on top of the line work. If the lines you put down are too heavy, you can bring them back a bit with adding some color. I'm going to put some high saturated color, which just means plenty of pigment, the bottom right-hand corner. And I'm gonna layer it right over the top of my gel pen and marker and Sharpie. And what I am careful to do is not add water, not very much. Keeping it nice and dry. Awesome. And so looking at my panels, I want you to evaluate the colors and the shapes and the lines and what's happening in each panel. And go to the panel that you think needs a little something extra. Maybe you wish you would have added more color. Maybe it was our dry on dry panel and you want to mix a little bit of a wash over the top. I'm going to revisit my second panel because I feel that it's a little stagnant. There's a lot of line and movement, but it's stagnant in the same monochromatic color. And I didn't do a variation of that shade. And so I'm going to add a different kind of green to the mix. I'm just going to do a light wash over the top of it. It's a little too white in the background.
I know what I want to do. Yes.
All right. Maybe a hint of red here at the very end. All right, wonderful. We don't have to restrict our line work of drawing with the markers and the gel pens to that first panel. If you want to add a little something extra to anything in between, feel free. But be loose with it. And what I really want you to just focus on the quality of the lines or the repetition. All right, start
Ta-da.
wrapping up.
Let me see. And pretties. I like.
All right. How is everybody feeling about moving on to our last steps? Are we all feeling good? Awesome. I don't want anybody left behind. So we're good? We're good. Okay, time to untape our work. But before we do that, I want you to use the back of your hand and test which panel seems to be wet still, if any. Okay? And in the interest of time, if we have any panels that appear to be too wet, we're going to use some of those pickup methods, okay? We can either blot the page or we can sort of, oh, I don't know, twist the end of the paper towel to pick up. If you're still pulling and it's still that wet, you probably want to just dab it at this point. And what that'll do is create a pattern on the page. And that'll be a pretty neat result in the end. So let's start to pick up. And we don't want to be too quick at this. Want to be pretty careful, nice and easy, and slow. And if at any point you rip a part of the page, it's all right. Chances are we're going to cover it with what we're doing next. So nobody panic. No panicking in paint. Okay. So this is the part, once we get our tape undone, we are going to hit the moment where our numbered corners are important. Not quite there. So I think I might have gotten carried away with that one. And so if you're interested in how I created these panels for you, it was a series of repetition in itself. And all I did was start with a circle template and draw out a negative shape of each one, being mindful that it wouldn't overlap with the one before it. And I used an X-Acto knife. All right. So I think I'll hang tight. Has everybody undone the tape? Undid the tape? Undone the tape? Are we disconnected? I don't know. I'm wondering what happened to the sound. Yep, I can see that everybody tried to unmute. I appreciate it. I'm just happy that everyone can hear me. So that's good. All right. So go ahead and stop me if you're not with me, but I'm going to move forward. I'm flipping each panel back over and we're starting from the very beginning. Okay. And so what I have, panel 1 in the bottom right-hand corner. And then we go 2, 3, 4, and 5. And that's the order of things. Now, go ahead and take those double-sided foam stickers that came in your kit. Is everybody with me? Can I get a thumbs up? Cool. Awesome. Thanks, guys. So we are going to place a square in the corner of every panel. And these things are super sticky. So what I find works best for me is to just apply the squares, and then we'll take off the top layer of masking tape at the very end, okay? So let's just focus on getting those squares down first. Every panel gets one in the far corner. So at this point, each panel is going to have 4. These double-sided foam stickers are so versatile. I have bought them for so many different reasons over the years. I love them. I've used them to make magnets. I've used them in scrapbooking. I've used them for metal templates in my metal shop. I've used them for woodworking when I'm cutting out table legs. They're extremely versatile. I always find myself needing them for something or another. Kind of pricey though. But an alternative way to purchase these is by the roll. And that's usually how I like to have them. And that way I can customize the size or shape to the specific job that I need them for. After you've placed these foam squares on the corners, go ahead and fill in between.
Huh?
So in the end, you should have 8 squares on each panel. Can you see what I'm doing well? Yeah, good. All right. All right, now I'm gonna hang tight while everybody catches up. And while I do so, I am going to remove that top layer to each one of these little squares and make a bunch of mess here, make a huge mess on these little papers. I'm hoping all of you get as excited as I do with the end result to this. It's pretty simple, but it's a whole lot of fun. And the more layers you apply, the more intricate the piece is going to be. And if you want to repeat this on your own, which I hope you have some takeaways that you want to repeat later, you can certainly be a lot more intricate with your negative space, as long as you have a very detailed or a very sharp X-Acto knife. You can create a lot of interest that way. What I found when I did my practice piece before this one we're doing together is that I really fell in love with some of the moments that happened on these panels that wouldn't be seen. And what I really appreciate is the opportunity to cut them out from the panel before and expose them if I so wish. Oh, it looks like I've got a question.
Why does the base layer need foam square?
The base layer need foam squares. Why does the base? Oh, shoot, it doesn't. Oh, who asked me that?
Jessica.
Jessica, you're awesome and smart, and thank you. Sorry to everybody else, it doesn't. Thanks, Jessica. And I have a note here, don't add to the last one. So go ahead and undo that. It shouldn't be a problem. Yeah, that's the first panel doesn't get squares. Thanks, Jessica. Bonus points. Or I take points away for making me wrong. I don't know. I'll let you know. Okay. So I think that I have removed most of the panels or most of the top layers to these stickies. And I think we can start connecting. Is everybody with me?
Still finishing sticky.
Okay, I got 1 thumbs up. I got a thumbs down. Okay, we'll wait. No worries. I got a lot of laughing. That's good. I can't wait to see what's happening in that panel. You know who you are. Such a good turnout, you guys. I'm so happy you came. So how many of you would be just as inclined to come if this was in person? Are you only here because it's online, or would you guys, can you stand me in real life? Cool. Okay, cool. I'm hoping be a good time in real life. Art should be experienced in the flesh. What's really great is when we're together, we can learn from one another. And Jessica can show me all the ways that I've messed up. Just kidding, Jessica. Okay, I'm gonna take a water break, guys. Did you check the sound coming from the computer itself? To see if the sound was muted off the computer? Nope, it's really loud. You guys, did we fix the sound? Can someone say something?
Hello?
I
What? I got
Hello.
voices. Hello.
You could
Okay,
cut
good.
these
Well,
with the
I
circuit
can hear
maker
you for
too.
our last 10 minutes.
If you have a circuit maker, you could cut these too.
What's that?
If you had a circuit machine, you could cut these too.
Oh, I
Is
was
that-
thinking that the whole time. I'm hoping to pitch that. See, this is why I need a circuit cutter. You guys, I did all of these by hand. My finger hurts,
I just got one, so
but it's worth it, right? They're going to be awesome.
yes, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. They were fun. And what's really great is if you came last time and the time before, we're really building on those kits. Okay,
I hide them from my kids.
good for you. You deserve something that's just yours. Okay. How's everybody doing? Are we caught up?
Think so.
Think so? All right. So if you've caught on, good. If not, that's all right too. We're going to start with number 5. Flip over number 5. And hopefully you undid what I told you to do. That was keep those stickers on. Okay. And be pretty. And then, so another reason we labeled them is so that we knew what was going to be the bottom and what was our top. Okay. And so our bottom right-hand corner is where we had that number. So we're going to flip it over. Try to line it up as best as you can. And it's not a one and done. So if you are out of alignment a bit, it'll be all right. Apply some pressure to those areas. Okay. And see, just that first layer is pretty fun, isn't it? I think it's pretty satisfying to see what's starting to happen. All right, let's go ahead and layer our second layer. Flipping it over. Okay. Is everybody following? We're all feeling comfortable?
yes.
Okay. Line it up, same thing, corner to corner, and apply some pressure to those points. And if you notice what's starting to happen is shadow is coming in and more depth is taking place the higher we go. And I think I covered my numbers. There we go with my sticky. That's okay. All right. Same thing, corner to corner. Apply pressure to the foam. Until you get to your last layer.
So how's this supposed to work?
You look at,
I'm looking at it,
so you see the depth, there's different shapes.
right,
We tried different techniques on each layer.
right, called 3-dimension.
Yeah,
Makes a shadow box.
So
I like shadow
it is kind of a shadow box. It's pretty satisfying in the end. And what I really appreciate too is that the different ways that you look at it you're gonna see different
Different-
things.
You know, like
One of
dry,
these days I gotta buy a shadow box for my,
like a dry on dry.
Yeah.
Like one
Can you switch
layer
the camera.
dry,
mhm,
that orange one with a little bit of yellow in it, that's
Mhm.
dry on dry with cubes and.
So how many of you are surprised about what's happening? Do you have something cool? Yeah? Oh, that's great. Jessica, that looks wonderful. Don't be shy. I want to see more. Oh, Jess, yours looks good. And Jasmine, oh, I like the triangles. That was good. I like the pattern work in there. Wonderful. And Dee, yours looks really pretty.
Thank you.
Absolutely. You guys, I'm
Casey-
so pumped. You did so
Casey, mine.
good. Oh, yeah. And that's Anne's. Anne, I love your patterns. Those are great.
So, it's-
Those are really,
Right.
really nice.
mhm,
and then just taking a Sharpie and different
mhm.
gel pens.
And so if you want to do this on your own, I was having a lot of fun with this, you guys, and I went home and started building on it. And I think I've got like 30 panels in one that I'm working on at home right now.
And then
And
this one,
it's pretty well, and it's pretty intricate, but
This
it's
water-
something that I can come back to and pick back up. And I'm really
That's-
having fun with it. And
Yeah,
what I was
dry.
talking about is, so
And
this
then-
this area here in the corner,
top of each
it's
other.
pretty dense, and there's a lot of just, I feel like I'm missing out on some of the cool stuff that happened underneath. And so if you're really missing out on what's happening in these other layers, just peel it apart, be really careful with it, and try, once you start to unstick things, you know that it's going to lose that integrity, and we're going to lose that. It's just not going to be as good as it was. But if you've got maybe you got a second chance, but I think that might be it. Maybe I gave you guys some extra squares, but if you want, take an X-Acto and these really highly dense areas, you can start to manipulate them, cut out more negative shapes, cut out some here, and then add some just to the left of it, just to the right of it. But have them be organic, or you can be extremely linear with it, geometric, very precise, whatever your personal aesthetics are. But the more negative space that you have in here, the more depth that'll be created, and the more that you'll start to see those interactions that we created on all these panels before it. So I'm definitely a three-dimensional artist, and I wanted to create something special and unique for you guys that incorporated painting, but also sculpture. So I'm hoping you guys enjoyed this project.
Yeah, it was
Thanks for
good.
joining.
Thank you.
And if you
Thank
you would please be willing for a pop-up exhibition, I would love to see your work in person, and it would be great to see our class together. So if you feel comfortable doing that, please bring them into the third floor and I will create a little pop-up for us. If not, no pressure. I'll just be super sad, but that's fine. I'm kidding. It's fine.
So were we
But-
gonna do anything in July or what?
So we are going to take a break in July. I am new, so I'm the Adult Services Event Coordinator, and this is a new position for me. And what I'm hoping we will do is launch a fine arts and crafts night instead. And I'm hoping to use the month of July to really structure and figure out how we're going to move forward with that.
Okay,
And starting in August or September with craft night, okay?
okay,
But just be on the lookout. We will promote these things. We'll be communicating with you, and be on the lookout. Stay watching our website. Obviously, come visit us. We'd love to see your faces in person, okay?
all right, thank
And you
you.
can submit ideas too. I'm formally trained. I have a master's of fine art, so I'm pretty well rounded. If you have always wanted to learn a technique, or you saw something on TV and you're super jazzed about it, let me know. And no guarantees that I know what I'm doing, but we can figure it out together, okay?
I saw that they were making teardrop beaded earrings on YouTube with a
Okay.
herringbone at Michael's. It was on their website. I don't know. I
Very
just-
cool.
You know, if you're looking for
Yeah,
like.
that
a
sounds like a
gift.
fun time. What's that?
I say it'd be kind of cool for like a Christmas gift or something.
I think so too. I'm really hoping that we can get together and make some crafts. I really appreciate homemade gifts. So I think it'd be good. We can get some cookies, play some music, and make a whole thing of it. I think it'd be a good time. Just let me know what you're interested in and we can make it happen, okay? Before we
This
go,
is-
do you guys mind taking a picture with me? Screen print. Do you remember how to do that? Oh, maybe just pause a second. Sorry. I think it's just a right click, right? No, I usually use Mac. I don't know. Try it, see what happens. Do you think it went somewhere? That's okay. We'll give it one try and hopefully it'll work. If anybody else knows how to screen print, would you mind doing it for me and emailing it my way? All right, we ready? 1, 2, 3. Yay! Thanks, you guys. Thank you everyone for coming. I hope you had fun and I really appreciate your patience when we work out this technology and all the little quirks, right? So let me know if you have any ideas and I hope to see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.